133. What the fuck is that? Alright, everybody, it's our Klaus here, and man, shout outs to Botch and that intro there, but in any case, I am very excited to present, as always, this stunning information to all of you today, and a very specific reason for bringing up that 133, which you will soon be made well aware of here. But for those of you new to the channel or still familiarizing yourself, I do highly encourage that you check out any of these videos that you see on the screen here, as I will be referencing them very heavily in today's presentation. Again, I am always building off of all of the research that I present to you, and so it really should be best viewed as a series. And again, thinking about the longer nature of some of these videos, you have to just keep coming back to them. But when you are able to view them front to back, the amount of understanding that is then put in front of you is really just something to behold. But so in any case, I really don't want to get sidetracked there. What I do want to talk about is this incredibly telling interview that took place recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. So you can see here, posted on August 6th, and this of course generated a ton of popularity when presidential candidate Bernie Sanders appeared on JRE. And again, in my video discussing Joe Rogan, we talk about not only how that sums to 33, but also his endorsing of nootropic drugs, again, able to cause irreversible brain damage, and just his whole connections to Disney and being a total fucking tool. But so in any case, today is his birthday, and I would still maintain my statement of telling him to fuck off for any number of reasons, and again, especially for his statements regarding mental health. But now, again, all of that aside the point, I don't want to talk about him really today. I want to talk about Bernie Sanders appearing on here. And you'll notice that it's episode 1330. So if we drop the 0 off of that, we're given the number 133. Now, this is very interesting because if we take the numerical value for each of the letters in Bernie Sanders' name, they would total 133. Now, that can be said for all of these phrases that are in this block here. And again, conceptually, I'm going to tie them together for you in a very airtight fashion. But so let's state a couple of things here. If we look at the total number of letters in his name, there are 13, and that is connected to the Death Tarot card. Again, the transformation card. And Bernie, of course, is currently 77 years old. Now, we're constantly discussing this number, but in connection with 133, this We the Nipple protest did take place in front of Facebook's New York headquarters, which is located at a 770 address. Again, dropping that 0 for 77. Now, that is also the chapter in Book of Lies in which Crowley's Scarlet Woman at the time, Layla, is featured topless and again submitting to the beast. Now, when we take all of that a step further and we see this phrase window seat is also connected with 133, and you wonder, well, what the hell is that? Well, it's a music video and a song from Erykah Badu. And in the video, she is assassinated while walking down the street nude, again, just like those protests. And she is shot in the same location that JFK was gunned down, allegedly, right? And so that's not a reach. If you go and watch the music video, it begins with a newsreel clip of Kennedy's announcement coming onto Elm Street, going to his final destination, which he does not make it to. And again, I don't want to get flagged, so I will not play that. But we have talked a lot about Badu in the past, and I will pull this up again. So this was for a single she was connected to, a song called Maisha So Long. And in the video, you see the one-eyed and last trumpet symbolism. But what's really peculiar is it's actually a cover of a song originally recorded by Miles Davis. Again, M and D both reduced to 4, so a 44, and both of his names are 5 letters, so 55. Of course, you could add those for 99. But it's a cover off of his album Get Up With It, which was actually released on the 11-year anniversary of Kennedy's assassination. And so, of course, 11, a chief magic number, the number of points on the cliff off the tree of death, driving us towards destruction. And of course, in tarot, the lust card and all the things that we're constantly connecting with that in the adult entertainment industry. But so phenomenally interesting to think about. But consider this as well, because we're going to keep building on these JFK connections. So, Ride Donnie Ride, as spelled here, also has coding of 133. So, of course, a mock-up of this Bullet EP, which I have talked about very extensively. But I will, of course, tune you back into the number 138, which appears alongside the track Bullet, which of course is the one about Kennedy's assassination. And we also will consider TM from the Misfits as 33. Again, 133, 1 times 33 gives us that very important number as well. So, another thing that I want you to think about here, and we're going to come back to these two in just a second, but in building on this imagery of being shot in a car, 133 is also the same as All Eyes on Me. Now, that is the name of Tupac's 4th album and his final album, in which on the cover he is signaling a W, the 23rd letter. And as I've discussed, 2019 marks 23 years since his assassination and that album's release. Now remember, Tupac is said to have been shot in a car. So we have all of that coming back. Again, the W to the head there we discussed being a reference to a bullet to the head. And really on and on. It's a phenomenal video. You have to check it out. But so think about as well, with Tupac connecting to all of this, that September 13th date, that's actually when Layla, again from chapter 77, bare-breasted, that's the date that she died. And that's also the date that the first New York City Marathon was held. And again, it's Uncle Sam, all of these things. We told you it was going to be an important day. And more of this information just keeps connecting back to it. But so again, when we go back and we look at this 133 coding some more, I want you to see this number 4 that connects in here. And again, like we were just saying, Tupac's 4th album. And in all of these connections with Trump and Kennedy, I want you to see this really interesting article that was released on Trump's birthday this year. And again, think about Marilyn Monroe notoriously singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to Kennedy. And of course, this article being released at 3:50, you drop those 2 zeros, Kennedy was our 35th president. Now, the article goes on not only to have Trump compare Melania to Jackie O, but also discusses how he wants to redesign the presidential plane, which has not been modified since JFK's presidency. But in doing so, he unveiled 4 mock-ups. And again, that number 4 is just... oh, my goodness. Thinking about Kennedy, right? 4th president to be assassinated. But go back here. And I want you to think about, again here, this reference to the White House, the Lima, all these pieces. But the phrase nuclear accident comes up. Now, let's build on this for a second. Because in The Simpsons 20th anniversary special, in the segment leading into discussing how the show has influenced the world's perception in such a way on nuclear power, the narrator is seen to be inexplicably walking past the number 133. Now again, in The Simpsons, the number of mushroom clouds and nuclear meltdowns and explosions is really just through the roof. And I want you to think about that in the 10th episode of the 2019 revamp of Twilight Zone, Seth Rogen is seen to be reading a card that says the words mushroom cloud. And of course, MC, the 13th and 3rd letters, give us a 133. And so, of course, also in that episode, a character at the end walks out of the door 138 and arrives in a post-apocalyptic landscape. And again, that episode entitled Blurry Man, you can see the references there to the future. And we're going to, of course, be talking about Trump's closing statement, "The future belongs to us," in just a moment here. But what I want you to think about, and this is really important, is this Twilight Zone episode is season 1, episode 10 of the 2019 reboot. And I don't think I have it pulled up here, but you can easily find that the Simpsons 20th anniversary special that I was just referencing with this 133, it actually premiered on January 10th. And so that's another 110. But so the reason that I'm honing in on those 110s is because we were discussing that in the previous video. And you can see on the right side of your screen here, not only the connections to the September 13th date from that prior coding, but the phrase storm area. Now, why I bring this up is because at the end of Bernie Sanders' Joe Rogan interview, he says that he would disclose any UFO information that he came across. And so storm area is in relation to storm area 51 because the numbers are always written numerically. And so the fact that that is this whole, fucked off thing that is kind of going on right now, these people that would just kind of willingly die, I guess, for that. But you see here on the right side these references to the new aeon and martial law, reference to Night of Pan, again, Knox, this huge concept in connection to transcending through the abyss. But on and on here with these connections, including to Elon Musk. And so we'll come back to Elon Musk later and his Neuralink, again, which he unveiled on World Snake Day this year, which did happen to be the 74-year anniversary of the Trinity test, the Manhattan Project, all of that. But so I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, so let's go back to the left side of your screen, and again, looking at that 133 coding and those references to the number 4. I'll pull up here all of these connections we've discussed in the past, everything from the number of nucleotides that make up our DNA to the cardinal points and the moon phases. It is an incredibly important number. So again, 45th, Trump, our 45th president. But so with all of that, right, like I said earlier, Bernie is running for president, which is an anagram for is pretend. So everything connected to his presidential run is pretend. And we can trace it to their narrative because it is constructed. Now look at this. Bernie's initials are BS, which obviously is a man of bullshit. But when we look at the 2nd and 19th letters as 219, it's very interesting because not only is that like 2019 if we drop the 0, but February 19th happened to also be the day that he announced that he was running for president. So now, this is just too much. Because we talked about February 19th and how that was the full snow moon, and that was this very important concept and set of coding to think about. And so again here you can see on the right side of your screen how its connections continue coming up to world currency and one united world, as well as the Manhattan Project, but you also see POTUS Trump. Now there's a lot more I could get into here, but I want to keep moving. So notice that when we add the date that the full snow moon occurred on of the 2, 19, and 19, it gives us 40. So very interestingly, the movie Us has a simple value of 40. And why I make it a particular point to mention that today is because when we take the movie poster and invert it, or turn it upside down, we have the word snow spelled S-N-O. And so a clear reference to that important concept. And again, everything in Hunger Games, it's President Snow, and just all of these fascinating concepts. Jordan Peele, the writer of that movie, did turn 40 this year. And so of course if we do look at snow without the W, it is a simple value of 48. Now do notice up here in that 133 coding, 48 is written out. And as I've discussed, this year's New York City Marathon, although it is the 49th anniversary, it is the 48th race because there was no race in 2012. But so again, you can see how all of that is connected on the right side of your screen, and just more fascinating information about that event. But now, Bernie ties into this movie even further though, because when we look at his campaign slogan, it's the phrase "not me, us." And the image here just really reminds me of the They Live poster, the movie where he wears the glasses and sees, the quote-unquote truth. But so again, a direct reference there in all the things we just discussed with that 219 connecting to that movie. But so remember as well that Trump, at the end of his salute to America, said the future belongs to us. And in my video discussing that in the Lincoln Memorial and all of those bits, again, that is an 18-letter phrase, the Lincoln Memorial, moon card. But all of the things, Trump being connected to the SNL skit where he is wearing the jumpsuit and outsmarts his twin, ends up killing him, burying him in the swamp. All the things connected to that. It is really astounding. And that's in the Joe Rogan video if you go back to that as well. But so, keep going here though, because the phrase, not me, us, is very compelling to think about because it has a simple value of 107. So, in thinking about, because we're going to start bridging into more and more of Russia's involvement here in some ways, and Putin's birthday is October 7th, and so you have that reference there in that number. But notice as well the idea of cardinal east. And as I discussed, USA backwards is the Assyrian name Asu, which is translated as the east. Again, concept connected not only to the eagle, but also to dualistic concepts of life and death. So also USA reduced is 311, a mirrored November 3rd. And so I'm constantly talking about that November 3rd date, and I will try to pull up for you on the right side here a good starting place maybe for you to see. So I mean, and really pause at any point here to see some great connections. But here you go. This is a great set right here that discusses that date, how it's connected more to this number 44, as in the last day of the 44th week, 44th Sunday, on and on here. So, getting back though, the left side of your screen, connections to, again, these concepts that I'm talking about all the time. But you do see here the ideas of the fourth single on Tupac's fourth album, and that single is Life Goes On, and I discussed that was released on 9/11, and again 2 days before his death, but they changed it after I put that video out, and I discussed all of that and what are the odds. But very interestingly here, we see the phrase Eleftheria. Now, why this is so interesting, and especially since it's coming up in connection to Bernie, a man saying that he's going to disclose UFO information, is Eleftheria is said to be a translation of the glyphs found on the Roswell aircraft that crashed in 1947. And so you can see further here that when they translate the rest of those glyphs, they get the phrase liberation and independence. And so I thought that was so interesting because liberation and independence has that 222 coding. And so that is also the same as the Joe Rogan experience, again, where Bernie is giving this very just contrived interview. Now notice as well here, it's the same as natural born killers, another 18-letter phrase, and World Economic Forum, 18 letters. Now all of this connected with New York, our current Trump's September 11 attacks, and these ideas of beasts from Revelations. So you have to see how phenomenally interesting that is. And the connections, again, because Tupac appeared in a music video for a song called Natural Born Killers, it's so interesting for me to think about that All Eyes on Me had 27 tracks, and so did Natural Born Killers. And you think about all of the madness that took place in the penitentiary in that film, and the interview that Mickey is giving, and the fact that Tupac is also, right, very famously gave interviews in prison, and his being in there was a huge part of his success, right? His album Me Against the World went to #1 while he was incarcerated. And so there's all of this fascinating stuff that it just continues to mount when you look at all of this. Okay, so familiarize yourself with it, take a look at those other videos. But let's get back here, and again, this polar bear is coming up in that film, Natural Born Killers. The polar bears and the Coca-Cola commercial that appear during Super Bowl 27 are what immediately precede, well, not immediately, but they're the last commercial before the prison riot, and the tone that plays when the Aurora Borealis is happening in the commercial does tone again immediately before the riot takes place. And yeah, so that's an incredibly important movie. Now, staying in this coding here for the 107 and his presidential slogan, it is the same as the phrase, "I am Iron Man" again, the last words spoken by Tony Stark before he sacrifices himself to reverse everybody being turned to dust. And notice as well, it's the same as Bernie's home state, the state he's governor of, Vermont. Now, this is really interesting to me that he is the governor of the 14th state, because, again, just thinking about these connections we were talking about earlier with Neuralink, Elon Musk's project that he revealed on July 16th, and it has that nice N on it, and of course the 14th letter corresponding then with Vermont. But so we'll come back to this, and again, that other image from the Godzilla movie in 2014, in which we are shown that giant 88 on the naval vessel before Godzilla destroys the San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. But so I'll come back to all of that stuff later. And again, we talked about Godzilla so much in the previous video, but I will highlight for you here the 227 that we get from Vermont, because V, the 22nd letter, is incredibly important. The number of paths in the tarot deck on the Tree of Life, and also comprised of 7 letters, that incredibly number of points on the Mark of the Beast, Seal of Babylon, continents, colors in the rainbow, all of these things. Again, rainbows associated with worshiping Moloch. But so, in thinking about that 227, and why it's on my mind is because the 227th day is coming up here, and on that day will be the full sturgeon moon, which does have that 227 coding. But so you will see here, that's also the same as the Great Depression ahead, as well as the Prince and the Pauper. Now, that is the SNL skit in which Trump appeared in the jumpsuit overtaking his twin, a la Us. And again, that number connected to, all of these major pieces here. International Polar Bear Day is 227, and that is when Joe Rogan gave his second interview to Alex Jones. And again, you can see all of these pieces on that day this year. There will be 138 days remaining. And, I'll pull up, I think I've got one more interesting 227 bit for you, so you can look into all of that on the right side of your screen, because again, such an interesting piece. But now, let's get back to this number here, 219, right? Because we're talking about Bernie started his presidential bid on 219, and it's also his initials. So when we look at the simple value for that number, look at that. Let's make America great again. Trump assassinated the U.S. Constitution. And again, think about that information I've shown you about the article released on June 11th on the bicentennial, where they're talking about the ratification of the Constitution. And the phrase Reduit Saturnia Regna is heavily featured in that article, in the image shown. And of course that does translate to the kingdom of Saturn returns. And in that bit as well, they talk about the Saturnian age. And so again, you can see coding for the Saturnian age on the right side of your screen here. All of the major pieces that it connects with, not only having the same values as Mickey Knox, again from Natural Born Killers, but also 7/7 written out, Human Sacrifice, the Blood album, which was released the same day that Trump was inaugurated president, and all of these other just massive pieces that we're constantly talking about, again, including the Black Skeleton. So the fact that Black Skeleton and 7/7 are written out connects directly to Bernie. As I said, 13-letter names, and he's 77. But so let's keep moving here, because you'll notice as well that in that 219 coding we have references again to Donald Trump and the Wall. Remember, he was 33 when that album was released by Pink Floyd. And I do want you to think about, with that 219, how it came up in reference to the span of time between when I started this channel and the 3rd of November this year. Again, you can see on the right side of your screen that is actually 1,314 days, but the simple value for that number, if it was divided by 6, is 219. And so very fascinating and profound connection at that level. But so again, back to the left side here, and all of these fascinating bits, of course, Super Bowl 27 written out there. And since we're always seeing this Hands Across America coding, again, from Peele's film Us, a very important piece. It represents, in the end, the overturning and killing of essentially half the world's population, or in essence, the whole world, because every member has a twin underground. And so it's a complete reversal of we can look at it as above, so below almost. But what I want you to really think about there is, because for Hands Across America's coding is 171, those numbers are also written out in Bernie Sanders coding. So again, this is at a level that is so far beyond coincidence. It is really just worth taking seriously. So now, notice as well here, and again we talked about this, but it shares that coding with One World Trade Center, again erected from the ashes of the Twin Towers on November 3rd. It was opened. So when we look at this span of time from Sanders announcing his presidential bid to the 3rd of November this year, again, not only the New York City Marathon, but also, interestingly, the day that daylight saving time ends. And you can see that coding on the right side of your screen here. But that span of time is 258 days. Well, I will be damned if 258 is not the same as New York City Marathon and the people who fucking orchestrate it, New York Roadrunners. Now you'll also see here these connections to President Donald J. Trump, as well as worst shark attack ever. Now one of the big pieces here that we've been coming back to is that in that 888 coding for Donald J. Trump is also Beast Division. And again, as one of my subscribers had pointed out, that is Russia's nuclear submarine division, and one of the most dangerous pieces of that fleet is I believe it's Akuza or Akula, and that is Russian for shark. And so again, when we think about how all of this connects back and you see these references to psychological operations, mind control techniques, and so forth, we think about in these Godzilla movies, not only with the direct referencing here to nuclear testing and that July 16th, but also to, right, the fact that these naval aspects are involved and Project Monarch and mind control is at play. So all of that is just incredible. But so, keep going here. Notice the reference to peace by vengeance brings the end. Now, this is pretty wild because that is the spoken word ending to Del Rey's song High by the Beach. And now, as we've discussed extensively, and you can see on the right side of your screen here some fascinating stuff connected to her cover of Bradley Nowell, who died High by the Beach, cover of one of his songs and all of its connections. But that song was released on August 10th of 2015, and so yesterday, of course, marking the 10-year anniversary of that release. So very not 10-year, fucking A. 4-year anniversary of that release. And so again, that number 4, that's her 4th album. And yesterday was also the day that Epstein was pronounced dead by suicide in his jail cell. So I'm going to talk about that a little more later on here, but again, completely fabricated news piece there fitting their narrative. But so, coming back here, and again, that video though, her song is so interesting because she's talking about this whole, right, everyone is born again and it's through revenge and we're reborn going through the fire, all of this very profound stuff. Of course, she did participate in hexing Donald Trump as well, and if I could pull that up for you on the right side of your screen, I would be very pleased with that, but it might be a little too much. Nope, there you go. So it's actually just right above and right in the middle of all that. So here you go, because that's all fascinating. But so anyways, not to get too side-railed here, stay with me. So thinking back to all of this coding we're seeing for Bernie here, right? Everything from President Donald J. Trump to Trump's slogan and references to him being assassinated, the idea of the bullet catch, and again performed by David Blaine, and that's the performance in which he's shot in the mouth. And as we've talked about, Trump is a mirror for Blaine. They have a history together. I have a whole video on it. And again, in Bernie's coding here, Ride Donnie Ride, we just see them constantly coming up. And so when I looked into that and thought about it further, it was really interesting because Bernie Sanders, just like Donald Trump, is designated to the 3 of diamonds. Now, your jaw should hit the floor right there. And again, our discussion of the Vitruvian Man and the 3 diamonds across his chest on this 33rd edition of the Economist's World End. And I'm going to talk about that number quite a bit here for a second, because you'll also notice it's the same as Walter Cronkite. This is who announced that JFK was dead. And you can also see in connection with that this birth date of November 4th. So inverted 411, just like 411 Elm Street. But notice as well here, August 10th. Like we were just talking about with Del Rey in the release of that song. And again, that was a date we were telling you to watch out for. And then Epstein winds up dead on it. But then here you have Kathy Griffin in the middle. And I'll always just keep coming back to it. But those images, and again, because November 3rd this year is going to mark 888 days since the release of the image. But again, her wearing that dark blue, and this being direct referencing to Kali, dark blue, and all of the things. So I will pull up for you on the note of that 810 on the right side of your screen here, that is the simple value, the English value connected to 3 diamonds. How about that? How about that? You'll notice as well it's the same as terrorism, Golden Gate Bridge, Rod Williams, who said the next 9/11 would be on some geriatric shit. And again, you can see these other pieces here that are connected to the 3 of diamonds, including the fall of Babylon and a date that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But so, all of that, right? And again, you can see another date included here, February 22nd, which is 2/22. And again, as we discussed earlier, that's the same coding for the Joe Rogan Experience, Natural Born Killers, all the things. So again here, notice Bernie, his simple value is 53, and that does give us direct connections to Coca-Cola as well as Wheel, Nox spelled N-O-X, that's real troubling. Again, the Knight of Pan. You see Ende, the word run, thinking about the marathon. That is an anagram for earn. Wow. As well as references to coffin, ending. You see as well Jaws. Again, these ideas of beast from the sea. And again, think about that Economist cover. The Stork's 10 digits do total 53. And when we mirror and add 53, we do have 88. And so, of course, that simple value of 88, sharing Trump, false flags, the New Age, you have your polar bears again, Whitman, I mean, all of it. If you've watched my videos, this is just such stunning information to see stack in. Epstein actually also has a simple value of 88. And so again, you can see Snow Us, when we were talking about the cover here, SNO and us, all of that connecting here, phenomenal. But so take a look at one last thing for a second, connecting Bernie's interview on August 6th and looking at the amount of time going forward to November 8th. So I'll pull this back up for you on the right side of your screen, because in this 3 of diamonds coding, one of the things we also see is Battle of Midway. And so, as I've discussed, on November 8th this year, Roland Emmerich, a renowned disaster filmmaker, is going to be releasing his film titled Battle of Midway. So again, that's a very important event that I have discussed in the past. But so, in thinking about that date, and I'm going to keep building on that, the amount of time between that and Bernie's interview is 3 months and 3 days. So there's that 33 again. Now, I want to build this out for you in a much grander way here. And so to do so, I'm going to take just a moment here, collect myself, and we're going to come back and really drive this home. So give me just 1 second here, and notice how wild it is, this synchronicity, that the charge is 95% when we're taking a rest on a span of time totaling 3 months, 3 days, 95 days. Alright, so we're coming back here and we're building on these numbers of 33 and 133. So, what are the odds when we come over to this landmark film, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and we find that on the most recent American Film Institute list ranking it, it comes in at number 33. And furthermore, the listed running time is 133 minutes. So, a lot to be said here about this movie. And let's start in talking about the man who wrote the book in which it's based on, Ken Kesey. And so, Ken is an interesting guy, because the inspiration for this book came from him participating in the CIA financed Project MK Ultra, in which he was given psychedelic drugs and experimented upon with them to note their effects to this and that. But so you'll notice here that while he's doing this, he's working at the Veterans Administration Hospital, and sometimes he would talk with the the clients, the patients, however we want to refer to them, while under the influence, and it led him to write this incredibly impactful novel. Now, it is very interesting to note that the success of that book led him to move to Santa Cruz, California. Now, what's very interesting is that Santa Cruz is where the film Us takes place. And so you can see on the right side of your screen here all of this information connected. And you do notice here for Santa Cruz the Uture. Now remember, at the Lincoln Memorial, in the writing for the future, it is mistakenly an E. And so that is why it is spelled that way there. But so again, you can see how all of this so heavily connects with these themes of 88 and 411 that we've been discussing, as well as the marathon and the end of America. But so, building on that further, Ken Kesey has a simple value of 95, which, as we said, is that span of time between Bernie's interview and November 8th of this year. Now, let's really unpack this for a second, because Kesey died in Eugene, Oregon at the age of 66. So Eugene, Oregon, both of those words are 6 letters, and so that's a reference to 66. And in Natural Born Killers, they go down Route 66 as part of their killing spree. Now, what's also interesting here is you can see more of that coding on the right side. But think about the fact that Epstein's death came shortly after accusations of forcing a 15-year-old to have sex with elite, quote-unquote, men. And in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the main character, McMurphy, is sent to prison and then the institution for statutory rape of a 15-year-old girl. And he goes on to later die in the institution, much like Epstein dies while in jail. And so, again, a very elaborate part of their narrative. So, another piece that's really interesting here is that the director of the movie died just last year, and he was actually 86 years old. And again, Bernie's interview on 8/6. So, wow, right? In 1986, it's Hands Across America, and that's 33 years ago. And we're going to keep coming back to that number, so please be sure to hold on to it. Now, in looking at Kesey a little more, because he is a really interesting individual, it is worth noting that his last publication is said to have appeared in Rolling Stone in response to the 9/11 attacks. Now, remember that in my video discussing Kali, we talked about the Rolling Stones and that tongue logo being a homage to Kali. And so this man's last interview being in a magazine, which undoubtedly inspired by that band name, is very interesting. But so I couldn't find the actual bit from Rolling Stone, but I did find somebody uploading this article from Kessie talking about 9/11, and so I can't help but feel like this is the accurate piece. So it's really interesting because he talks about not being able to write the day that it happened and wishing that he could have. But so what's interesting here is he says this, and he's a great writer. He says, "The talk was planned to prepare us for war. It's going to get messy. Everyone agrees. It's going to last for years and probably decades. Everybody ruefully concedes. Nothing will ever be the same. Everybody eventually declares." Because we are talking not just about war this time, but about the war above the war, the real war. And this war has already been waged and is not between the US and the Taliban, or between the Muslims and the Israelis, or any of the familiar forces, but between the ancient, gut-wrenching, bone-breaking, flesh-slashing way things have always been, in the timorous and fragile way things might begin to be. And again, he goes on talking about these ideas of the future and notions of peace. But so what's really interesting to me is that he was pronounced dead 85 days after the 9/11 attacks. And when we're looking into that number 85, it is the same as Joe Rogan. It is also the same as Blackout and Plan 9. These are the ones who released that Bullet EP. And you also see here the word storm, again thinking Storm Area 51. The reference to the Red Star, Ragnarok, again the destruction of everything, including gods. And then you see their bandwidth. And as we were talking about earlier, Elon Musk has that 110 coding for the New Age and all of these other pieces. And remember, on July 16th this year, he talked about his Neuralink project, which is coded the same as Jordan Peele. But so what he goes on to say is, I'm presenting this as a way to let humans interact with technology if they're paralyzed. And then he goes on to say, but ultimately I want to achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence, and essentially in any scenario humans are going to be left behind unless we spearhead merging with the AI. So it escalates very quickly in that, and in the nature of the importance of the number 4, of course they're using 4 sensors to implant inside of you. Now, I could go on and on about all of that, but I did in the previous video. So again, he states his only concern is with the idea of bandwidth and being worried about the processing speed of the human brain, and again, really going to evolve all that matrix shit there. But so, when you look at the coding for the real war, again, from Kessie's essay there, it does have that 666 coding. And that does bring us to High by the Beach. Again, Del Rey's single released August 10th, that 3 of Diamonds card 4 years ago yesterday. But as well, you see New York, USA, Anarchy, a reference to the T Phoenix from the '88 Economist cover. And you also have Dollar Crash and Illusion next to the word iconoclast. So iconoclast is an incredibly important idea. You see, defined a person who attacks cherished beliefs or institutions, in particular a destroyer of images used in religious worship. So think about that in the sense of money. what is worshipped above all else. And if one were to destroy that, what would take its place, right? This is the area we live in here, thinking about this change that is just over the horizon, and this idea of a one world currency and the total collapse of our current economic system and the chaos that will ensue from that. But when we're thinking about the word iconoclast and how it comes up here, and the fact that Kessie dies on November 10th of 2001 is just really too much for me to not go into. And so you do see that English value of 1110 is the same as Lisa the Iconoclast. Now this is episode 144 from The Simpsons. Again, a very apocalyptic number. I'll show you more in just a minute here. But it is also season 7, episode 16. And so a reference to not only the date that Musk reveals Neuralink, but again, as we said earlier, the Trinity test and how that took place on 7/16/74 years ago. But so what I wanted to show you here is this image from that episode, in which we have the assassination that's to take place at the end while Lisa is giving her speech. And the reason that I highlight this is because it's really similar to a scene from the film The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Now again, this is another central piece to Pez theory and does star John Wayne, who has that 115 coding. But again, it is very, very compelling. The ideas of law and order, the Athenium's role in this, that painting behind him there. And in this episode of Lisa the Iconoclast, that painting is a major piece in revealing that Jebediah Springfield, the founder of Springfield, is a lying pirate, a silver-tongued pirate at that. And so really the fact that it shares that coding with the date that Kessie dies, and it's also the same as Donald John Trump, as well as Judgment and the Star, the two cards that are tilted on this Planet Trump cover, which does share coding with 3 of diamonds, is really something to be taken into consideration. But so again, these references to the coming king, and again, that's what she said is from that Badu song I referenced earlier, So Long, the one in homage to Miles Davis. So let's keep going here though, because I don't want to get derailed in that. It's a whole series of information in and of itself. But so that date that he died, to November 9th this year, a date that I'm going to start expanding on, is exactly 18 years. And again, the importance of that moon card, and can also be viewed as 216 months. Now, we have continually come back to this number 216, as when we take the 666 times itself, it does give us this number. Again, one of the many considerations for a number of the beast. But you do notice that it references the law of the strong, which is book 77 from Crowley. And so, again, all of the pieces with that, you can see with Whitney Houston on the right side of your screen here. And we did discuss her releasing her version of I Will Always Love You on November 3rd, 92, and the massive importance connected with that. But 216 as well, I mean, it keeps popping up in relation to these spans of time. Because honeymoon, and I'm going to venture getting lost here to be able to hopefully show you this span of time. But so released on September 18th, 2015, and going to November 8th this year is 216 weeks. And so again, the 8th and the 9th right on each other. And notice that when you add those dates, if they were written 11/8/19 and 11/9/19, gives you 77. And so all of the ways that that has also been tying in today. Now, consider as well those dates, November 8th and 9th, both reducing down to those divine numbers, 88 and 99. And even in just thinking about that 99 again, remember that the final graffiti that appeared on the Lincoln Memorial on September 18th, 2017, had that coding for 99. All right, and all of these pieces that we had discussed in that. But in any case, when we add 88 and 99 together, it gives us 187. And so 187 is the same as Northern Lights. Again, the name of that Coca-Cola commercial that appears in Natural Born Killers right before the prison riot. So again, the English value for that number 187 is 1122. And again, the date Kennedy is assassinated, 187 being that police code for homicide. So you see again here though, control reality, the divine phoenix, the Saturn death cult, Trump 13, this huge thing we've discussed, brotherhood of death. It really goes on. And think about Jordan Hayworth Peele, director of Get Out and Us. The initials for him reduce to 187, and he'll come up again later today, of course, as well. But so consider this, because really at the core now we're talking about the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and much like the film Us, there is an obsession with the number 4 throughout that film. And so the first thing that really indicates that is the fact that instead of being set in 1962 like the book, it is instead set in 1963. Again, the year of the 4th U.S. presidential assassination of JFK. Now, when we look into the other events that give us the insight that this is taking place in 1963, over the radio we hear a reference to Game 2 of the World Series that year. And you can see in that game, Los Angeles wins with a total of 4 points. And they also won all 4 games of the World Series that year. And then so the other reference that it gives us is when the TV is talking about the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. Now, do note that there were 4 deaths in this event, and it was carried out by 4 members of a local Ku Klux Klan chapter. And so again, those 44s and the single 4s are very important. And notice as well the coordinates here, 33 and 86. Again, Bernie's interview taking place on 8/6, and Hands Across America taking place 33 years ago in 86. It just is really, really stunning how it connects. But so now, one of the things that's kind of weird about that is they present those out of chronological order. So they talk about the World Series first and then the bombing later, even though the bombing took place 19 days before that World Series game. So again, 19, Path of Resh, 2019, Sun Card, all of these bits. But it really made me wonder about if there's another twist that they were intending to have in that. And again, thinking about the director of that film, Milos Forman, he does have this 135 coding. And so again, all of the things that we're always discussing with that number, and again, its connection back to the 3 diamonds. But so let's look at another card that comes up here. Because in the film, Jack Nicholson shows us this four of diamonds. It's part of his explicit card deck, which he becomes quite notorious for. But so if we go back here and we look at the birthdays that are connected to the four of diamonds, we do see some very interesting connections here. So take a look at the date January 23, because that's when David Blaine spoke at the World Economic Forum. And again, that was the 33rd day of the government shutdown. And February 21st is Jordan Peele's birthday. It's also Kelsey Grammer's birthday. It's pretty interesting. Shout out to Supreme Frequencies for asking about November 3rd in relation to to Seattle in any way. And when I saw this connection here with Grammer, I did think about him starring in Frasier, and of course in his apartment, which is really the main setting for that show, the Space Needle is visible and his apartment number is 1019. So we could look at that number as a reference to either October 19th or drop the 0 for 11/9, again a mirrored 9/11, or a reference to November 9th. So that's what I see in relation to that, not necessarily the 3rd, but here's what's wild: the four of diamonds is connected to November 3rd. And so again, all of the energy being put into that day, and thinking about all of the presidential elections that have taken place on that day. It's when the 2020 elections will take place. But look as well here, May 15th, because 515 is written out in not me, us, that coding we looked at earlier, same as bullet catch, all of that. And the show Frasier actually does end on May 15th. That's the day that Niles and Daphne get married, Eddie's in the vet, all this other shit's going on. But very interesting stuff. So again, that card, by no mistake, ending up here in the 44 that we can glean from it as well, is absolutely something worth taking into consideration. But so let's take a look at these bits here. So the film takes place in Salem, Oregon. And so the hospital, Oregon State Hospital that it's shot in, check that out, coordinate of 44 and 123. Are you with me? Are you seeing it? So again, you can see here that 123, and we were just discussing that 44. But so take a look at this, and you know what, actually give me one more second here before we talk about the Oregon State Hospital. So how interesting, if you saw me just pull that up there, Eugene, Oregon has the same coordinates, 44 and 123, as the Oregon State Hospital located in Salem. So holy shit. Now check this out. Originally named the Oregon Hospital for the Insane and connected to eugenics research and lobotomy practice. So again, how all of this connects in with the Nazi roots, and you have to go watch that American Psychosis video. But one of the interesting things here, I'm just going to scroll through this because there's so much, so pause, read through, but it was officially opened on October 23rd, so 10 and 23 is 33, and throughout its run, it was the subject of many different controversies, severe poisoning that took place, killing 47, on and on. And one of the things I found to be really interesting is that, much like Natural Born Killers, since this was shot in a real institution, just like that film was shot in a real prison, there are real mental patients in the film. And so to me, that is really interesting. Also, the fact that the year after the film was shot there, the hospital opened their child and adolescent secure treatment program. Now again, that's weird because McMurphy ends up in the institution for statutory rape of a 15-year-old. And you can see down here that that program was closed in 2004, and so it did not pan out. But to me, that is some pretty sick shit as far as looking at those connections. But so there is also an interesting event that was the subject of a lot of controversy, in which over 5,000 remains were found buried or down in the basement, and had just kind of been left to time and rotted away, all these things. But another bit here is they do have underground tunnels connected to that facility. And I thought it was really interesting because you can see that the cinematographer for the film was replaced due to his concurrent work on the documentary Underground, following the radical terrorist group the Weather Underground, notorious for bombings. And what are the odds? And so when we look at 141, which is the coding for Underground, you do see World War III, as well as, again, these references to Answer the Call. I'll come back to that in a moment here. And all of it, okay, it's all there. But so, going back here now, taking place in Oregon. Oregon is the 33rd state. In Oregon State Hospital has that coding of 239, which is the same as I could shoot somebody, which, remember, is what Trump said on January 23rd years ago. So again, all of that wolf in sheep's clothing, this idea of disclosing alien information, on and on. But so again here, noticing the film's obsession with that 44, you can see the total production budget listed as 4.4. And I think that is all of the information that I wanted to touch on in relation to all of that, which means that we can start rounding the bend here. So just a quick shout out to this scene. Nicholson is trying to convince the other members on the unit to change the schedule so they can watch Game 2 of the World Series. And he says there's a majority, and Nurse Ratched says, I only see 9 hands, and there are 18 men on this unit. So a reference to 918, an incredibly important number. And so you can look here on the left side of your screen. That would indicate he needs 10 out of 18, and we can drop the 0 from that, and it is the date, November 8th. So of course, more on this reveals these connections to 9/9 as well. And again, remember that on September 18th, that last coding or that last vandalism on the Lincoln Memorial happened, and again it has that coding for 9/9, and you can see how that all connects in there. But again, I'll pull this up for you because again, Del Rey's Honeymoon album being released on that day, all the other massive connections to these national security and Department of Defense agencies, again, the CIA being established, Kessie participating in their MK Ultra program, on and on. Of course, the chief giving his 10th vote in that number. But so, one of the guys that really stood out to me in this movie is Scatman Crothers' character, Turkle. And the reason he stands out to me is because he's always asking people if they understand, and he also repeatedly says the phrase, "get out." And so, part of what is so interesting here is the fact that he and Jack Nicholson are in Cuckoo's Nest and The Shining. So this is pretty wild. And the sequel to The Shining is said to be released November 8th of this year. So again, continuing to build on that number. And you can see its initial release was May 23rd, and that is actually Scatman's birthday in 1910. But so I think it's just so weird though, because again, this is for The Shining, and you see here Scatman's character, Dick Halloran, clear sexual innuendo. And then you have the actor Joe Turkle, who plays Lloyd. Now this is the bartender that Nicholson imagines in his head. And I think this is so interesting and compelling because in Cuckoo's Nest, Scatman's name is Turkle. And I just really feel like that hails to so much importance in his character. So if we take his initials, you'll see that we get the number 193. And so of course when we look at that, it is the same as 2019, Pink Floyd The Wall, Donald Trump Dumbo, and again, all of these just fascinating pieces. Tupac's full name, Old Faithful, it's amazing. But we can also reduce it as 1 and 3. S and C can come down to 13 for the death card. So very interesting representations there. So notice as well, he was born on May 23rd, which reduces to 55. And then he died on November 22nd, which reduces to 33. So 55 and 33, we have our 88 again. But so that date was in 1986, and I'll be damned, that was the 23-year anniversary of Kennedy dying. And so as I talked about in this pangolin video, which again has coding for 88, chapter 23 in Book of Lies is Skidoo, and you can see Crowley is talking about the term get out. And so it is really fascinating. Here's the commentary section for that, and where he translates it and really breaks apart what he is talking about here for initiates and how this comes to transcending the abyss. So this is fascinating. Fascinating. So, of course, in 1986, and that's the same year as Hands Across America, which this year marks 33 years, and of course, Crothers' death will have that same anniversary on November 22nd. So some interesting things here. First of all, 2019 is the 56-year anniversary of Kennedy's assassination, since we're talking about this. So 56 is the same as the word out. And I do want you to see that on the right side, because again, get out, it is being told you have to figure it out. And so the connections to Storm and I Pet Goat 2 and all of these bits, the end, are very important in understanding what is at play here. Of course, 5 and 6 is 11. Just like I said, that Maisha So Long with that last trumpet stuff, that album that it is based on was released on the 11-year anniversary of the assassination. So all of this is interwoven and tied in. But so take a look at this. Because that Hands Across America event is so incredibly important, the span of time between it and Crothers' death is 182 days. So what are the odds that's the same as false flag operation, kill Donald Trump, hidden in plain sight? You have a reference here to the end of the world, the goal of Saturn, serpent, and the devil. And November 4th is written out. Again, the founding of the National Security Agency happened on that day, and all of the other information that we've talked about with it. So to me, in the fact that border security comes up, and that was the whole reason for the government shutdown and whole instability from that this year, BS 2019, BS just like Bernie Sanders. So, rounding the bend here, if we look at the release of Cuckoo's Nest to the 56th year anniversary of Kennedy's assassination this year, it is 44 years and 4 days. So you got that nice 444. And so there are so many 444s here, but you can see its connection there to the number 74. And again, that is the same as Jesus and Lucifer and dark blue, again, the idol of Kali. And it is a huge number connected with Thelema, nuclear powers, the king, all of this stuff. But so let's do a bit of a hard turn here and get into, and again, that's that 88 from Godzilla, right when he's getting ready to turn over the ship. But I do want to show you from Cuckoo's Nest this number 9 that's appearing on the bus, because to me it's a clear reference to November 9. And again, this plays its role throughout here. It does end up taking them when they go out on the water. And when they're stealing the boat, you see the name Mary H. MH is 138. And mirrored, that is the name Hiram, which is most high. And so again, the fact that they go under the bridge and come back through it, this major arc here going out onto the water, and what that all means. But so in any case, bus number 9 does have that simple coding for United States and 4 horsemen, as well as ultraviolence and the shutdown. So we can also see the number 108 written out here, and that is a supremely important number. It is Chase Sherman's number when he runs the New York City Marathon. It is also connected to the phrase buried alive, greatness, and again, all of these other huge concepts that I'm constantly coming back to. But so notice this is interesting. If we look at it as bus 9, that's a simple value of 84. So interestingly, the 84th, 10-8, so looking at that, right, building on 108, is the 281st day, but there's 84 remaining. So I think it's really something that they connect there, so to be considered. But remember with this November 9th date, and again, the bus, I think, is a clear hail to that. NO9, it's clear November 9. That's the 4-year anniversary this year of my first channel being banned. My initials do give you those references to November 9th or 9/11, depending on how you reduce them. So when we look at the coding here for November 9th, it's really interesting because it's the simple value of 159. Now think about those, that 16th Street bombing that happened on 9/15, which could be written as 15/9. And so with that, though, again, references to Project Monarch, again, all of that Godzilla stuff, the 4 beasts, satanic ideology, gold scissors are what are used to sever the tie in the film Us. And again, here you can see the numbers 174 are written out, which are the same as the untethering. So that's actually really airtight connection. And that coding on the right also for New World Order, TCS, NYC, Marathon, and again, all of these massively important pieces. Stormy Daniels, the wait is over, you'll find out. Such an incredibly important phrase, the 222 written out. And again, we've discussed all of that getting to this point in the video. But so thinking about that as well with Project Monarch and Missy Armitage here. That's the name of the woman in Get Out who uses the T set to perform her hypnosis. So since Soylent Green comes up here, let me shout out to Human Practitioner as well, because in his comment here, it really sparked my interest on something that had come up in relation to the film Soylent Green. So remember back to that film where the 2 volumes are given to Soul, and they're for the years 2015 to 2019, and there are 2 volumes. And so in his comment here, and we're always talking about the 2019 World and Economist cover, and in his comment he's referencing the 2015 cover. And so that made me think that's why there are 2 volumes in Soylent Green, because it's a connection of 2 of them. And so I was telling him that I thought it was really wild because we had actually brought up the 2015 cover in the David Blaine video. And we mentioned the peculiarity that The Economist had actually clipped Blaine out, because as we talked about back in 2015, Blaine is the representative of Trump. He's behind Putin. And then in this one from The Economist store, he's clipped out, and the letters AP are revealed, 116. And in 2019, the 116th Congress came in. But so notice as well in that the ones doing the reporting on the Buried Alive segment are AP. And so it goes in, and here's just more of that information with their Dive of Death, which was announced on September 18th, and all of the massive connections there. But so again, just sticking in line here and seeing all of these connections that go through, it really is quite stunning. So shout out to that, and I know there's much more involved there, but I do really just want to get that on the table. And again, Soylent Green is the film in which they are turning people into the food. But so this is the last bit here, and I want to of course cross-check November 3rd with The Simpsons. So here's what's fascinating. On November 3rd, 1996, again the same year that Tupac dies, this episode, I'm trying to pull up this 155 for you here. Yes, okay. So this episode comes out, and it's called You Only Move Twice. And in this, again, it's the 155th episode, and I have pulled up on the right side of your screen, the We the Nipple protest was on June 2nd, and the amount of time from that to November 3rd this year is 155 days. And of course, our Klaus Amen is, right, 155 for the number of letters. And so, a lot to think about there, but let's keep building on that. So, as I say, it premieres November 3rd, 96, and it just so happens to have a simple value of 242. Well, remember in my previous video, that number as a span of days came up tremendously. And when we looked at that simple value, it was Fall of the United States, Temple of Understanding, trauma-based mind control, right? All these huge pieces, as well as the date October 28th, which is the first day of the 44th week. Again, the NYC Marathon is the last day of it. But so we also talked about how the 242nd day is when Tool is going to be releasing their latest album after 13 years. And so again, you can see all of these connections, how it all comes into 138 and 66. Again, their new album, Fear Inoculum, sums to 138. And, you know, just really on it. Really fucking on it. So again, building on that 13. And the other thing that's really critical to keep in mind here is that in this episode, Homer's boss, Hank Scorpio, again related to death and tattooed on Mallory Knox, is his boss, and turns out is a mastermind formulating a plot to take over the East Coast of the United States. And so to prove his point to the United Nations Security Council, he blows up the 59th Street Bridge. So that would be this bridge. And how incredibly wild is that? Because we were just talking about that bridge coming down and its relation to the critic. So this is wild because it's actually season 1. And they redo it in season 2. You can see he's here with Alice, who is from Knoxville, Tennessee, and the bridge falls again. And so again, I posited thinking that was the Manhattan Bridge. But if we go with this idea here of the 59th Street Bridge and this episode of The Simpsons, again, the critic and The Simpsons have similar writers, you can see that Queensboro Bridge is the same as New World disaster, as well as global economic collapse, and Alexander de Rothschild, the one who is currently at the helm of that dynasty. So notice as well here the Economist cover and how all of these bits come back here. September 29th is World Heart Day, and again, supremely important day. We talked about that in the previous video. So there really is so much on the table there, and I want you to think about the critic as well, because I showed this in my last video, and I'll play it for you again here because I think it's so fascinating. But listen to what he happens to say.
Half of you states.
I don't got fucking ads. Play it.
You states are in the toilet, and you're not coming out. New York, you know what I'm talking about. California, kiss your smoggy butt goodbye. New England, you're going back to old England.
And then it goes back here and shows you this article that came out with ISIS threatening those same exact locations in 2019, just the other week here. And so, you know, really all of that incredibly powerful. But consider as well here, another episode of The Simpsons released on November 3rd is the Treehouse of Horror 13. So what are the odds of that? And it's season 14, episode 1. And again, that is the same as Underground, as World War III, Answer the Call, which appears in those ISIS articles right here. And on and on. That is a phenomenal catch right there. And so notice here, when we look at the coding for Treehouse of Horror 13, you just have these ideas of a mentally deranged terrorist, and we're coming back and back to that. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, thinking about the Oregon State Hospital and the scandal with the 5,000 misplaced urns. These references to the rider of the White Horse, the destruction of government, and September 11th attacks. So again here, when we break down when this was released, you do see that we can get the reduction to 55. And again, 55, such an incredibly important number connected with Burn, Black Flag, New Age, Rogan, all of these huge pieces. So notice the amount of time between the release of that episode to November 3rd of this year is 17 years and 1 day. The fucking Pez theory, Hands Across America, all of it. And remember, since today happens to be 8/11, as we discussed, Hands Across America, 8/11 is the reduction, but since that movie is all about mirroring, I said and maintain that November 8th is the most important of days for us to continue looking at. But so you also see here written out the Death Tarot card, and again, considering it's from the 13th special, it's really something. Notice as well here, if we take it from that premiere date to November 9th of this year, it's 888 weeks. And again, how that number is connected with Donald J. Trump, David Blaine, Kali, 13-8, satanic ritual, all of it is right there. The path of none is the path of death. And so can be written 17 years, 7 days. And so that's a 177. I'll be damned, that's the same as Scatman Crothers. Also crossing the line, the Crescent City, the Scarlet Woman, the Mark of the Beast. So I believe the last bit here is just images from that episode and how it mirrors what's going on. So Homer randomly fucking says 23, and again, skidoo, get out, all of the things. And then all of these clones start coming around, right? And the way these clones start coming about is they utilize a hammock, and that's how they replicate themselves. And something that I thought was interesting is, again, this other November 3rd Simpsons episode, hammocks are a main part of one of Homer's dilemmas. And so the fact then in the Treehouse of Horror, in which we have the decapitated head, and again, all of the referencing back to Kathy Griffin and Kali, Liberator of the Mind, Queen of Swords, is stunning. But at the end of this episode, Marge realizes that the real Homer is dead and it's one of his clones. Now this is just like the ending to the movie Us. And again, well before it comes out. So the other segment in here is about gun control. And I think it's really interesting, this phrase, I dream of a world without guns. Because it is the same as President of the United States, the 7 seals of the apocalypse, the coming star of destruction, and Judith with the head of Alephronis. Now remember, I don't have the image up on this one, but Judith beheading Alephronis is one of the most influential pieces really of art, and Artemisia here is the one who made it, and she is on this 33rd edition of The World End from The Economist. And so of course all of that tying back and back to these images, again the dark blue, the referencing, it's just so stunning. But so let's get back here to these last few images. So, dream of a world without guns. The guns are banned. It leads to the dead rising. You have this 4 horsemen symbolism. And of course they managed to get a Nazi in here. Interestingly, Homer is forced to play piano, not piano. And originally he plays Moonlight Sonata. And so you can see the connection with that song in the NASA Bluebeam project. Again, here this is a huge number. You see 138 written out. You also have Order Out of Chaos, the economic meltdown, and again, really all of these huge pieces. Animal extinction, something we talked about with the cover, and really just on and on. That's a fantastically important number. But so, back to these images here. You'll notice here in this same segment, there's time travel referenced. The hands are on 12 and 2. If we mirror that, it's 221, like when Jordan Peele was born. But so, again, all of this violence and time travel. Last segment has to do with humans being merged with animals, this transhuman theme here. Ralph is a peacock, says I'm a dog, of course dog mirrored as God. Ralph has that 135 coding. But this scene really reminded me of this one from the 77th episode that we were talking about in the last video, where they're chanting blood for ball as they go around and around But so to really wrap this up with the number 4 here, they do end with the space aliens seeing that Skull Island, which everything's taking place on for that transhuman bit. And they say, how funny that is our number 4. And so, again, number 4 coming all the way back here to Bernie Sanders and all of that coding in the beginning. So, damn. It's a list of some 18-letter phrases for you at the end here. Again, all connected with the moon card. All things that we've looked into. All things I'm not going to really go into at this point. I will pull up Jordan Peele's full name coding, though. Because it is very important, again, connected to these pieces of the second 9/11, the coagula procedure, choosing greatness, the elephant in the room, geriatric shit, on and on. And again, because all of that connects with this Hands Across America, and again, the connection of that, all of the capacities it comes up in. You can see my modification here, Hands Across America 2019. And I'll also show you the Hands Across the World, because that brings us right back to our New York City November Marathon, 156 written out, the reference to that number 141, and the greatest hoax ever. So I do feel like 156 is about as good a number as any to leave this presentation, because it does come up not only with episode 88 of The Simpsons, but also the chorus on track 4 from Del Rey's 4th album, which will be turning 4 this year. And again here, these references to the Battle of Midway, the November 8th coding first Sunday, which will be the New York City Marathon. And again, all of the things supremely important. You see the 33 written out, the 3 of diamonds, it's all there. So I'm going to scan through here to just make sure I've shown you all of the coding I want you to see. You can see this is from Treehouse of Horror 18, and some very interesting connections there with how the span of time of its release from November 4th, very interesting, to November 3rd this year is exactly 12 years. Again, the Hanged Man sacrifice card. Again, Trump and Blaine's Dive of Death announced on September 18th, in which Blaine is upside down. All of that referencing. But there's that 144 on the right side of your screen. Again, all of that connected in. You can reduce it down further and further. There's some stuff down here, yeah, that really is just reiterating points I didn't get to or couldn't really find a place for. So yeah, all interesting, but that's what I got for you today. So I really appreciate y'all taking the time to hang in here, and I know it's another video that's on the longer side, but again, if you're really paying attention to what's going on here, there is a ton of, and yeah, one more. That Maisha So Long Erykah Badu song, released June 24th, 2016. And part of why that is so interesting is because the date, June 24th, can mirror a lot of things. It's when Independence Day Resurgence was released. And it also coincides with all of these other pieces here, all right? So take a look at the fact that it was released on it, and if we write that date as 246, we can mirror and add it as 888. And so notice as well, when that song came out, it was the same day that the Brexit results were announced, that the UK was going to leave. And so again, that idea of so long. But so again, the amount of time from that to September 26th of this year is 1,190 days. Drop the 0911, or again, 3 years, 3 months, 3 days. And one of the other things we had looked at was that span of time to the New York City Marathon. And again, you can see 40 months, 11 days, dropping that 0 for 411. And yeah, so I'm going to end it there though, because I'm going to get long-winded. But again, thank you all so very much for taking the time. I am going to plan on doing that live stream sometime in the near future here. And so I do again appreciate everybody's support and hope you're doing what you can to improve yourselves and your community and to get ready to go out on a high note here, because it's coming and it's coming hard. So again, thank you all so much, and please be well.